I have worked on a couple of trolleys before, but this one is definitely the most beautiful one. I really like these details. I think this is just some random piece that someone screwed in, but it doesn't look like it's from this trolley. It's really beautiful, but it's also quite beat up. There are lots of little pieces of veneer missing. This decorative detail is broken. There are bits of wood missing and will need to be redone. And this wooden knob with a thread needs to be fixed as well. I'll see if I can straighten it a little bit before I put it back on. As you can see, someone put quite a lot of work into this, so I'll do my best to restore it. Looks like there's a split in this leg and in this one, and significant damage, so I'll need to address this. But let's get the wheels out. Looks like these are on dowels, which is going to make it a bit easier. This bottom shelf isn't glued in some places, and also it will make it much easier for me to clean it when I remove it. Hello beautiful people, and welcome to another video. This little trolley has a lot of character and I hope you'll enjoy this video. A small piece broke off, but that doesn't matter because it's on the inside and I'll glue it back together. So as you can see, someone screwed this in and there is another hole. And I don't actually think this is the original piece. Yeah, I don't think this is the original piece. This black stuff, I think this might be soot mixed with grease, which was used on old furniture, but it's not really coming off, so I'm not sure. It might be actually paint. I actually think it wasn't paint, and I think this is a proper antique, so this was probably soot mixed with grease, which kind of worked like a stain. Looks like someone repaired it already because it was too loose, so they added this piece of wood. This project was a bit tricky because this is an antique and it's got lots of character, but it had lots of damage and the scratches were quite deep, so I had to do a little bit of sanding. There are a few pieces of veneer missing on this edge, so I'll need to fix this. So my goal for this one is to give it a major facelift, but make it look natural, if you know what I mean. I don't want to change it, and I'm not going to change the color or anything like that. I just want to make it look as good as it can look. I'm doing a lot of the sanding by hand because there is veneer on this and I don't want to damage, and I also want to remove as little as possible. I think the edges, as it typically happens, have seen the most abuse, so there's lots of little pieces of veneer missing and I have to replace all of them and color match them. I didn't have the exact veneer, so I used a piece of cherry veneer because it had a similar grain structure, and as far as the colors and the pattern, I'm just going to paint it on to match the rest. The good thing about this veneer is that there was adhesive on the back of it, so it was very easy to apply, but still it was pretty tedious and took a while. Once I fixed all the little pieces, I used touch-up markers and I mixed different colors just to get me as close as possible to the surrounding veneer and make the grain pattern look similar. And because this trolley had top and bottom shelf, I had to do the same thing again, but I'm not going to show you the whole process, just little bits. Other than sanding, I also had to remove the old glue. There was a lot of it. just to make sure that the surface was clean and ready for another application of glue. Matching the grain pattern and colors is not an exact science, and this is something that I've been working on and I'm getting better at, and you just need to try until you're happy with the result. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna spray this side of this panel with water, and I'm hoping that the wood fibers will expand a little bit on this side and will kind of straighten itself out. But if this doesn't work, there isn't much I can do. I'm not going to plane this because it's quite thin, so there isn't much to work with. So if this doesn't work, I'll just glue this down and I'll kind of force it in place, if you know what I mean. I think it will be easier if I take this bottom out and do a proper clean. These nails are very rusty. I'll need to replace them, but looks like this one is actually going to come out. Sometimes it's just easier to push the nails in, because if I don't do this and I can't take them out while I'm pulling the bottom out, I'm gonna scratch it. That bottom did not want to come out, so I had to encourage it a little bit. And after I sanded it, I put it back in, and as I was doing it, it actually broke in half, so I had to re-glue it. That's why you'll see some tape on it, and I'll sand it a bit more before I put it actually in. As I mentioned, I wanted to remove as little as possible, so in order to get rid of the old varnish, I used acetone, and because there were not many scratches on the front of this drawer, I was able to sand it with 240 grit, so very gently. Another reason why I wanted to do minimal sanding is because of this beautiful inlay, and as you can imagine, this is not very thick, so I wanted to do as little sanding as possible. And I did the same thing for the rest of this drawer because it was in a decent condition on the inside, so there was no need for harsh sanding. My original plan was to do the same thing for the rest of the trolley, but there was quite a lot of damage and this trolley was really beat up, so the acetone wasn't quite enough and I had to do a little bit of sanding. Oh, and this part, that was so much fun. Anyhow, so the decorative design in this corner was the one that was intact, so I decided to copy this design and repeat it on the other side that was broken. As I mentioned before, I actually think that the design went from one side to the other, just across the whole thing, but I have no idea what it looked like, so I decided to just recreate the corner bits, and I think that looked quite nice and I was pretty happy with that. As you can see, I basically cut a slice of wood and I copied the design onto it, and then I used a scroll saw to cut it out. The good thing about this decorative piece was that it was actually quite flat, so I didn't need to carve anything, I just had to cut it out. That took a while, but it wasn't terribly complicated, so once I was done with that, I had to sand it and just finish it so it looked nice because it was a bit rough. So I'm going to replace the entire thing, and I need to cut this bit off. And the reason why is because this is quite fragile, so it was easier to glue the whole thing rather than stitch it together. I think this was actually extended all the way to the other side, but I don't know what it looked like. I can only guess. Just like I mentioned before, and if I ever see a picture of a trolley like this, so I know what this looked like, it won't be difficult to add it on, but I think it looks pretty good with just the corner bits, and I'm happy with that. This trolley is quite busy anyway. Now I need to do something about these, because I've got a couple of these, and some of the legs are split as well, so I need to glue them. And also this little curve thing was missing, so I used the extra piece to make one. And now I just need to color match this to the rest, and Bob's your uncle. The casters were really rusty, so I soaked them in rust remover overnight.
A few moments later.
These actually look surprisingly good. I don't think I need to do much with them. I will. I'm pretty happy with this. I won't need to paint these. I'll just give them a good polish and I think they will look perfectly fine. Nah, they won't. And this is the crack that I had to fix that I mentioned before. This was cracked, so I glued it off camera. And now I need to take these off so I can fix them. There's a small crack in here and there is no movement. I can spread it apart, so I'm just going to try and push some glue in. Unfortunately, I was not able to remove them, and because they were quite fragile, I didn't want to risk breaking them. And if there is any squeeze out, it means that there is some glue inside, so there you go. This one is a similar story, but there is some damage here, so I think I need to take this one off. At least try to. And this is gonna be tricky because obviously there is a hole inside for the caster, so there isn't a lot of surface to work with. So I tried heating it up and all sorts of other things, and it didn't work. This is a bit of a mess, but half of it is okay. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna flatten this side and glue pieces of wood and then shape them to create this ring. And this one is mostly intact. There's only a little bit of wood missing, so I think I'll just fill this in. This is such a tiny piece. I'm just going to use UV resin on it. There are also a couple of small pieces of veneer missing. So I'm gonna fix these. And as you can imagine, there were lots of little pieces, and I'm not gonna show you all of them because it's basically the same process. So you've got an idea. Anyhow, I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone for watching my videos. As always, I really appreciate it, and a special shout out to the channel members. All the links are in the description if you would like to support what I do. Thank you. And all these little repairs will need to be color matched to the surrounding veneer, but I'll do it at the end. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this little trolley. I think it's quite unusual and very beautiful. I haven't seen one like this before. And I imagine, given the amount of work someone put into making it, it was probably quite expensive. Because this resin corner is so small, I'm just going to use this file to make sure it's flat and I can be very precise with it, unlike if I used sandpaper. And you won't be able to tell. Alright, let's deal with this. This is a bit tricky, but I think I've got a plan. So I made these surfaces flat and I'm going to glue this piece this way and then this one this way, and then I'll make this shape. In ideal situation I would want to do this on a lathe, but I couldn't remove it and I didn't want to break it, so I did what I had to do. This little thing has taken me a long time. Wish I could just take this off and use my lathe, but it is what it is. This part I was able to remove easily, so I'm going to use my lathe to fix it. And in order to do it, I turned the circle into a square and I glued pieces of wood all around it, and now I can shape them into a ring, if it makes sense. This wood is very brittle and I'm afraid that this will just break, but I don't know how else I can do this. And because it was very brittle, I took my time and I was very careful and I did it little by little and it worked. And just like that, I turned a little square into a little ring. And after cutting off the support piece, I was able to glue it in place. I think this is the last one. When I was done making all those repairs, I used a nylon brush. This is 180 grit, and I just went over this entire trolley to remove any remaining bits of lacquer. And on the flat surfaces I used 180 grit sandpaper just to remove any scratches, because there were quite a few. As far as I can tell, there was no stain on this trolley, so even though I removed all of the varnish, I think it was shellac in this case, I knew that after putting the top coat back on, I would make it look pretty much as it looked originally. As I mentioned before, I wasn't happy with the way these casters look, because even though I removed the rust, the plating was pretty much gone and they just did not look nice. So I cleaned them up with the wire wheel, and surprisingly it actually did pretty good job on the rubber. I didn't want to paint them, so I decided to use a little bit of rub and buff to give them some blink, and I think that was a pretty good decision. This color was something between gold and bronze, and I also painted the pull that I'm going to use exactly the same color so they would match. And now it's finally time to put it back together. This was pretty straightforward. I put the shells back in the same way. I took them out, I just applied some glue and lots of clamps, and I left it overnight to dry. But before I went home, I actually used a small wet brush to clean any glue squeeze out, because I didn't want to deal with that later. So I thought about this knob, because this is the original one. It's broken, so I would need to fix it, and it's not a big deal. I could easily do it, but I think it's a bit underwhelming, and I can just put on something a bit more fancy. So I'm going to use this thread, and I'm going to glue it in and cover the hole this way, and then I can make another hole in it and put the screw through. And surprisingly, for once, it's not going to be brass. I've got this vintage pool, and I think I'm just going to paint this, and I'll use this instead. So this is something that I've used for my car, for the plastic bits, and it works very well and lasts a long time, and I think I might be able to use it on the rubber. So this is working just as well as I was hoping it would, which is great. I think this looks a bit better. I also sprayed the casters with clear satin lacquer.
A few moments later.
The following day I removed the clamps and I dusted off the trolley and got it ready for the lacquer. There was also a small void in the top shell that I forgot to fix before, so I used a little bit of UV resin, gave it a light sanding and bobs your uncle. And for the top coat I used clear satin lacquer, and I sprayed multiple coats and finished off with 2 coats of the same lacquer but in gloss. Just look at this dramatic change of color. It's actually surprising, even though I've done it so many times, that just a simple clear lacquer makes such an amazing difference. And as I mentioned before, I imagine this is what it looked like when it was new. And once the first few coats of lacquer were dry, I made some color corrections, because this is the best time to make them, as you know exactly what the finished product will look like. I hope you guys are enjoying the video. Please do let me know in the comments if you agree with the decisions I made as far as this restoration, and if there is anything you would have done differently, and what you think about this trolley to begin with. Probably some of you will ask me what sort of wood this is made from, and to be honest, I don't know. I'll try to do some research and find out, and I'll make a comment and pin it if I can find it. But definitely this is a beautiful wood, and it actually had quite distinctive smell, and I think this is probably a good indication for what it is. And if you do know, do let me know in the comments. At this point I'm pretty much done with this project. I'm going to spray a few more coats of lacquer and apply some beeswax, give it a polish, and it's pretty much done. By the way, Mando says hi. You haven't seen him in this video because he's been doing cat things, but there he is. I absolutely love this little trolley, and I think it's beautiful. I'm very happy with the result, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a like, comment, and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. Enjoy the final results, and I'll see you in the next video.